All right, guys, let's see if I can get through qualitative with one recording. Maybe not, because this is what I love, and you guys know that. So let's see what we can do. So let's talk about the characteristics of qualitative research design. Qualitative research is a lot more flexible and elastic. The actual research process, down at the bottom it says emergent, and that's true. It changes as you do your research. As you see things that you need to look at, you can actually change your direction. So it's not as static as a quantitative type research. It's almost always non-experimental, and you can see why. We're not randomizing groups. We're trying to really look at what's going on in people in their real world natural settings and how that affects their outcomes, kind of. The intent of it is to just give a really good, deep description or explanation so people can really understand this phenomena. And as far as time frames go, it can be cross-sectional or longitudinal. So you can do this all at one point, or you can follow people over time and do a longitudinal study. So let's talk about, we're going to spend most of our time on these 4 primary types of qualitative research, and then I'm just going to hit really quickly the other ones in the chapter. But these are the ones that are going to be on your compare and contrast table, so you need to understand these. So ethnography, what they seek to do is really describe and interpret a culture or cultural behaviors, and to be able to look at those and understand what happens in those cultures. One of the founders of nursing and nursing research, Madeline Leininger, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was an anthropologist. She had her PhD in anthropology. She did ethnographic type studies. She actually went and lived in Papua New Guinea with a tribe way out in the middle of nowhere and lived with them for 2 years and just immersed herself in their culture. And a lot of her work, I actually got to hear her speak not long before she died. And all of her work has to do with cultures and understanding cultures and how those affect their actions and what they do and how it changes how they experience the world. So it's very, very interesting stuff. So what an ethnography does, they want, a lot of times, the researchers, an outsider, and that's called the etic perspective. It's the outsider's view. So what the culture looks like from the outside. But what you're seeking in an ethnography is the emic perspective, or the insider's view, to understand what it's like to be part of that culture. So really it is an in-depth, actually immersing yourself in that culture as part of an ethnography. One I was thinking about as I was reading over this chapter, and that would be interesting in today's society, is what about an ethnography on immigrants in America today? I mean, you guys can turn on the news for 5 minutes and see that there's a lot of mixed emotions and feelings and back and forth on what that means. And so that could be a very interesting ethnography that would be very applicable to this time that we're living in. So the phenomenology is another type of qualitative research, and this is actually what I'm using for my PhD dissertation that I'm working on right now. So this is the one that I probably feel the most comfortable with as far as explaining it and using it myself, and I hope I don't get too long-winded. But what a phenomenology does is it wants to look at a lot of times it'll be worded as the lived experience or the essence of the experience. And so it's, what does it mean? What is your interpretation of being in the world? So for phenomenology, they mainly get their data from in-depth conversations with a small group of people who've experienced the phenomena. So it's not just a quick, this is what's going on. And you really don't use a lot of other data sources besides conversation and recorded conversations. So it's very verbal, narrative type research, which is probably why I like it. For descriptive phenomenology, you're going to describe the human experience. And so you want to know, what do we know as persons? And the steps that you use for descriptive phenomenology are bracketing, which is where you actually, in your writing of your research in phenomenology, if you're doing descriptive, you identify what your preconceived ideas and views are, and then you try to hold them back and keep that somewhat separate from what you're researching. Intuiting is the second one. And that's when, like I said, since you've bracketed out your own personal feelings, then you can try to keep yourself open and receptive to the experiences of the people that you're interviewing, and to be able to analyze objectively what they're saying and report that data. A lot of times this involves reflexive journaling throughout, and that's how you can get your feelings and your views out in a journal and keep it separate from your research. But a lot of times that's part of the research process in descriptive phenomenology. So in interpretive phenomenology, still a phenomenology, you're still looking at the human experience of life and being, but you're asking what is being. So instead of just describing it, you're looking for a deeper understanding or interpretation. And this is based on Heidegger. And you hear the words or see the words when you're looking at these kind of reports, hermeneutics a lot of times, and that's just an understanding. So hermeneutics refers to kind of the art or the philosophy of interpreting the meaning of an object, like text and those kind of things. And so in this, you don't bracket necessarily. You actually, your own views and your ideas, you recognize that they influence your research, but that's part of life and that's part of being, is that we all have influence on each other. So it's kind of a different take on it. In hermeneutics or interpretive phenomenology, they'll also look at text and art, different kind of art forms and those kind of things to pull into their research. So, like I said, it sounds a lot softer, but this is the kind of thing that I love doing and like working with. So the next type of research we're going to look at is grounded theory. So what grounded theory looks at is it tries to discover kind of a social or psychological problem that certain people experience. And actually, from grounded theory, we get a lot of our theories in nursing, our middle range theories. And ECU nursing used to be built on Roy's adaptation model, which is a middle range theory. There's also theories that you might have heard, like Orum's theory of self-care or Watson's theory of caring. Those are middle range theories. And those types of theories are what are built from this grounded theory research. So this is kind of going back, I would relate grounded theory a lot to like descriptive quantitative research, because that's when you kind of have a feeling that something happens here, but you don't really understand the relationships. And so for quantitative, you do a descriptive study to kind of try to pull out those relationships and understand them. Grounded theory is that same type of thing. You may not really know exactly how this happens, but you feel like there's a relationship. So you do this research, and then you come up with this theory. And usually a grounded theory study will end up with some kind of diagram or algorithm or flow chart or concept map or something that shows how these things work together. And so that is the point of grounded theory, is to develop theories. And then from these theories, you can move into quantitative research and really understand the independent variables within that theory. So grounded theories, typically very in-depth interviews. They can also use observations, written documents, all of those things. And what happens, and with a lot of qualitative research, but especially with grounded theory, as you collect data and you analyze it, then you say, I need more information. So you go back and sample again, or you change directions a little bit, and you just keep modifying until you come up with a very well-rounded theory. And you'll hear in a lot of qualitative research studies that there may not be a specific number of people that you need to interview, but it's to data saturation. And what that means is when you start hearing the same things over and over and over again, then you've reached data saturation, and you can say that, okay, this is the human experience of this thing, because you're not hearing anything new. The next type is historical research, and there's not a ton about this in your book, but this is where you look at data from the past. So usually with historical research, you're looking at diaries, letters, newspapers, medical records, legal documents, those kind of things. So always an interpretive type research. And what you're wanting to know is what happened and then how and why that happened. And we can use that sometimes to prevent things from happening in the future. So those are the 4 primary types that we address, like on your compare and contrast methods. But there's also some other types of research. Case studies is one that you'll come across. And this is usually focused on one person or just a few people. It could be a larger group, but it's usually related to like one incident. So some of the case studies that I've seen have been related to like a school shooting and the fallout after that and what people experience after that. So it's just usually a very in-depth analysis of one person's experience, and it's usually collected over time, that information. Narrative analysis is really just breaking down and analyzing text. It can be through interview, or it can be through actual physical text. When you break that down and analyze what they're saying. Descriptive qualitative studies, this is kind of the broad approach, or they might say eclectic type of approach, where you're just wanting to describe what's going on as it's perceived by the people that are experiencing them. So the rules can be different for every type of descriptive qualitative study. So, like I said, this is a little bit different than quantitative research. The roles can be bent and changed to get you to what you want to know and what phenomena you want to study. And then there are 3 types of research that are mentioned in your book that deal with ideological perspectives. So what these look at a lot of times are political or like affirmative action type things that are going on, and the social structures and how society is influencing these populations. So critical theory is looking at social structures and looking for new possibilities. Feminist research is basically focused on women's lives and their consciousness and how discrimination and gender differences and those kind of things affect feminists. There's also disability research is another type of research that focuses specifically on disabilities and the social constructs that influence people with disabilities. And then here there's participatory action research. And so this is looking at vulnerable populations and in communities that may be at a disadvantage for some reason. And this is looking at the way that society sometimes oppresses these people, bringing light to those kind of things. So, like I said, qualitative research can go in many, many different directions, and I think that's why it's so interesting. I love hearing people's stories and love relating people's stories, and I feel like, even though I know the importance of quantitative research, that really either one of these could be really one-sided, and you don't get the full picture, because even with quantitative, with all those controls, you tend to kind of eliminate the true human experience and what people feel and experience. And qualitative research helps bring that part of it in. So it's a valuable form of research as well. And I did get done in under 15 minutes. I don't know how. I wanted to tell a lot more stories, but so I will let you go on this chapter. I'm going to do a recording for the compare and contrast research methods table, just especially for the RN to BSN students, because you guys haven't been able to work through that with me in class. And for those of you who have had that opportunity, we will, please feel free to refer back to the video, and I'll just kind of touch on some of the things that we've talked about as we worked through in class and the places where I saw people struggling and kind of talk you through that. So that video will be up. Please use it to your advantage, and if you need any help on that document that's due next week, please let me know and I'll be happy to help you guys. All right. Thank you very much.